Hello everyone, this is Naresh IAS Academy guiding platform for the civil service exams. I have started topic and syllabus discussion series for General Studies paper 1, paper 2, paper 3, paper 4 and essay writing paper. I have already discussed question paper 1 and uploaded. So, you must watch the video. If you are a fresher student, definitely it will suggest you or help you for preparation, and if you have 2 or 3 years experience of the examination, it will strengthen your capacities or approach. So, in both condition you must watch the video. We are providing an intensive classroom program at Jaipur centers and we covers all the general studies question paper within the 20 days. So, you may contact. What is the approach or requirement of UPSC? You simply can understand through any guiding platform, and through this video you can self evaluate. This is the syllabus discussion session of General Studies paper 2 IAS Mains, General Studies paper 2nd. Okay. I have classified the different topics which are mentioned by UPSC in the syllabus of question paper. First, UPSC required the basic information or knowledge about Indian Constitution and its background. So, we have to discuss some topics about the Indian Constitution, and the second part is there are some constitutional offices, their importance and role, or emerging disputes regarding the constitutional offices. The third part of the syllabus is there are some regulatory bodies. Further, we have divided these regulatory bodies into constitutional, non-constitutional, statutory or the non-statutory bodies, and next is the issues regarding the governance. And the last part is India's foreign relationship. This includes mainly the 4 lines which I have mentioned by UPSC. So, here I can write this: the foreign policy or foreign relationship of India with neighboring or non-neighboring nation. This is the syllabus of the General Studies paper 2. Simply the Constitution, constitutional offices, regulatory bodies, governing issues and issues related to the governance, and last the foreign policy. Part 1 of the GS paper 2, Constitution. The basic information of the Constitution. It includes different topics. One is the background of the Indian Constitution. How the Indian Constitution was formed. This is the background. There was a Constituent Assembly, and Assembly took the time about 2 years, 11 months or 18 days for the completion of Indian Constitution. So, this was much time. However, the assembly had Government of India Act 1935 and the constitution makers have studied about 50 constitutions of the different countries. So then why they did the too much time for the completion? The constitution makers were agreed to form a perfect constitution or a flexible constitution which covers all the changes over the time or the new expectation of the new generation of country. So there were two dimensions or two approaches of the constitution maker. The UPSC here have asked the question why the Constituent Assembly took up the much time for the completion of the Indian Constitution. So definitely when you are studying this topic, covering this topic, so you must enlarge your approach, having a two important guiding platform like the Government of India Act 1935 or 50 other constitution of the different countries. Second, the basic features of Indian Constitution. There are so many basic features, but here I will discuss only two because they are most important. One is Indian Constitution is not absolutely a unitary constitution or federal constitution, but the features of unitary and federal are found in Indian Constitution. So most of scholars are agree Indian Constitution is a quasi federal constitution. UPSC have required information from the candidates or students from the last 10 years or the recent time. It has been seen a clash or cooperation between the union and the state government to have the federal features more refined. And what are the main reasons? This is simply a clash between union and states. Union have polite itself or have cooperated the states, and sometimes it has seen states have not cooperated the union government on the various issues, and it was seen at the time of the GST Act or the GST law. It was delayed about 10 years when the more than half of the state did not assent the bill, so it was delayed. So definitely you must cover the federal features, or what do you mean by the quasi federal? This topic must be covered. And second features, India have adopted parliamentary form of government from the Britain, and now it has been seen or the most of scholars have commented or criticized the parliamentary system because it is not functioning appropriately, and India should remove the system or quit the system and adopted the presidential form of government or the American pattern. Definitely here you must try to understand what are the shortcomings or demerits of parliamentary system, why the parliamentary system have failed to cover or complete all the requirements or expectations of present generation or the country's need, and can the presidential systems may be more appropriate. And second, what kind of barriers may be in the path of adopting the presidential system, because here there are two important barriers, you must know about them. One is parliamentary systems is a constitutional feature because it has been written in the Indian Constitution, and second, Supreme Court have declared parliamentary system as a basic structure. So whenever the parliament or Indian politicians will decide to through the parliamentary system, so definitely they have to face these challenges. And what are the basic features or important components of the presidential systems. The presidential system will cover all the requirements of Indian democratic systems. Will the political parties agree to accept this? So, you should enlarge your preparation to cover these topics. Next is why the constitution makers have granted the more power union than the states, and we have seen a strong tendency of union government than the states, and it can be compared on the basis of executive power, legislative power, financial power, regulatory mechanism, or on the grounds of the foreign policies, and why the states are demanding more powers. So, here you have to understand what kind of powers now states required and what is the reaction of union government. It must be covered by all the students. Next is the part 1 of the Indian Constitution. Part 1 of the Indian Constitution covers the formation of new states in India. There was a time when it was thought there shall be no requirement for the new states in India, and the formation of new states process has been stopped now, but we are seeing it is continue till today. And if we are forming the new states in so many numbers, then definitely it will create problems before the national integration, and it will increase clash or debate between union and states. So, here you should try to understand what is the process of the formation of the new states, and are the so many new states in numbers appropriate or suitable for the Indian circumstances. Second, the part 2nd of Indian Constitution, the citizenship. This is a big topic, but here I will discuss the only one features. The Citizenship Act is a landmark for acquiring citizenship of country or for renouncing the citizenship, and the new dimension which have emerged in 21st century, or we can say in the globalization era. India is pressurized by the internal forces, or in other words we can say by the pressure groups. India should adopt the dual citizenship or sometime the global citizenship. So, then here we have to understand what do you mean by the dual citizenship and what are the barriers before adopting the dual citizenship. One is the Indian Constitution, because the Constitution provide only the single citizenship, and second is the Supreme Court. Supreme Court is a custodian or guardian of Indian Constitution, and the single citizenship also have declared the basic structure. And if Government of India agreed to convince the Supreme Court, can it be possible for adopting the dual citizenship, and how can we ensure the Indian people the dual citizenship will immediately solve all the pending issues or problems of countries. So, what are the basic features of dual citizenship, and those countries they have provided dual citizenship for their citizens, are they enjoying all the rights? The part 3rd of the Indian Constitution is the fundamental rights. There are so many fundamental rights, and I hope the conventional part you have already studied or learned, but here there are one or two important information we should discuss about them. One is the expansion of fundamental rights. Why the Supreme Court is interpreting a new approach for the fundamental rights? Is it only a view of Supreme Courts only, or definitely we can say it is a global need of the country? India is running with the global powers, and so here we are feeling or requiring the addition of the new fundamental rights. That's why Supreme Court have interpreted and the so many fundamental rights have added, and recently it has seen the new interpretation of fundamental rights like the right to privacy or right to marry under Article 21. Now they have become the landmark. Then why UPSC have asked questions from these topics? So you must know what is the approach of Supreme Court while interpreting any fundamental rights, and are parliaments or state government or state legislature agree with the new interpretation of Supreme Courts? Because there was a time when debate or clash between the parliament and Supreme Court, when parliament required to promote or weightage priorities of some directive principle of state policy over the fundamental rights, then Supreme Court reacted aggressively. Finally, Supreme Court agreed to provide priority only the few DPSPs over the fundamental rights. In future or in the 21st century, when India will lead at the global level, definitely we have to require the more fundamental rights and rights of the different classes like the homosexual marriage, live-in relationship classes, or the transgender communities. So then these communities are requiring different kinds of fundamental rights. However, they were not in the original constitution and they were not the part of the Indian culture. So we are facing the different kinds of problems here. So you must know these new emerging aspects. And the next part is the Directive Principles of State Policy, the DPSP. You know, in this topic we must discuss about the two factions. One is DPSC cover the Uniform Civil Code under the Article 44. What are the requirements for the implications of Uniform Civil Code, and how much extent union and the state government or the civil society of country have agreed for adopting this? And Supreme Court so many times have ordered or advised to the government or policy maker for the Uniform Civil Code. So you have to identify what are the important barriers. And one more things which is required by UPSC, if the Uniform Civil Code is implemented in India, so will it infringe some fundamental rights of religious communities or the minority classes? Definitely here you have to prepare your mindset and you have to drive some points so you can prove your answer. And second thing is DPSP ensure or provides the ideals of our constitution maker. One is India should be a or must be a welfare state, and it is our moral duty to ensure India must have a welfare states. But recently we have seen union government, state governments now emphasizing over the private sector privatization, and governments is reducing its size and rendering more of its responsibility for the corporate sector or the private sectors. And we have also seen there are millions of peoples are involved in the beggar system and they have no housing, proper education and the food. So definitely it is a great challenge before the country. What will be the concept of welfare states? Have India given up, or India is trying to achieve this goal through the another way by including the corporate sectors. So then India's constitution makers and their ideals and the present government is not too much dedicated to achieve these ideals. So you should try to understand what are the main problems for the adoption of these goals. Next is the parliament. Parliament is a big topic. How can we cover? You have already studied the factual information of the parliament, but here two important things. One is the functioning of parliament. Parliament mainly execute its functioning through its parliamentary committees. So then the role of parliamentary committees in the previous year exams, if you have seen, so many times question have been asked from the different committees, like the role or performance of estimate committees, public account committees, committees on PSUs, and why the parliament is emphasizing the role of to enhancing the role of these parliamentary committees, and what is your own opinion and what do you think about the parliamentary committees, and according to you what kind of powers must be invested in the hand of the parliamentary committee. So this is very important topic, you must cover this topic. Second, the role of the members of parliament, MPs of Lok Sabha and MPs of Rajya Sabha. We have seen the role of the MPs is declining day by day, and this is not a healthy tradition or good for the country, parliament, and as a entirely systems. So then how can we improve the performance of the parliamentary members? It could be either by the parliament itself or by the voters, it means the peoples of India. So definitely we have to point out or drive some topics on what areas the role of the parliamentary member have declined and how can we improve this. Be required for this some parliamentary act or legislation, or it is only a moral responsibility of these members. Okay. Second is the role of the judiciary. The role of judiciary. Judiciary includes the lower court, subordinate court, high court and the Supreme Court. Factually you have completed the different articles of Supreme Court, High Courts and what I have mentioned in the different articles. This is one aspect, and the more important is the role of judiciary, and which is known as the judicial activism. Sometimes it is called the judicial overreach. Judicial activism defines or enlarges the role of Supreme Court beyond the judicial boundaries. Now Supreme Court is interpreting all the expectations or all the need of Indian political parties or the different groups of the countries. Before executing any bill or law, so many pressure groups or the member of civil society contact with the Supreme Court and they request for banning these laws or bills because they are not in favor of the country or society, and Supreme Court have done so many times this. Then here we can say the Supreme Court is intervening the executive role, parliamentary role or the legislative role. On the other hand, we can see there is a separation of powers. However, it is not in the absolute form. Judiciary have to play its role, executive have to play its role and legislature have to play this role, and they are also interrelated to each other. But recently the Supreme Court have played very aggressive or dynamic role and it have overlapped all other agencies. So it is not good for the country, and how can we restrict that and how can we stop Supreme Court and not to not to do these things. So then you should know the concept of judicial activism, in what limits we want this activism and in what areas Supreme Court should not intervene, and how can we pressurize or impose restriction over the executive and legislature not to do anything in the wrong manner. Then judiciary, and there are some other topic like the amendment in the Indian Constitution. Amendability in the Indian Constitution is the absolute power of Indian Parliament only. The state legislature have not given any scope for the amending process. So then can it is a right decision of the constitution maker? And nowadays the most of states have raised this demand. The state should be given right to initiate for the amendments, but the parliament have denied this because it have not mentioned in the Indian Constitution, and we have amended Indian Constitution so many times. However, we are facing different challenges. So then what should be the new dimension, new approach of the amendment, and parliament how can discuss with the states before amending the constitution? So it is another aspect of this. So then while you are preparing this topic, and you must cover the such kinds of approach about these topics. Okay, this is the one aspect of the GS paper 2. Second, some constitutional offices. Recently the different disputes have emerged from the constitutional offices like the presidents. One is the Indian president. In the Indian Constitution, presidents have given so many powers like legislative, executive, financial, emergency power, issuing of ordinance, and the judicial power. On the other hand, the parliament through the 42nd Amendment Act during the Indira Gandhi, 44th Amendment Act in 1978 during the Morarji Desai's prime ministership, they have restricted or binding the hand of Indian presidents. And now we have seen the parliamentary bills or acts finally criticized by the Supreme Courts or on the different platform of the Indian society. Then if these bills have so many demerits or defects, why they allowed by the Indian president? The Indian president should play more active or creative role. And can we drag Indian presidents from the shadow of 42nd or 44th Amendment Act? So then the role of Indian presidents have criticized so many times, and this is not a good, because Indian president is a first citizen of country and the office has its constitutional designation, and the office have maintained its respect. If we are continuously criticizing this office, then definitely it is losing its decorum in the present time. Second, presidents have imposed the president rule in the different states so many times, and presidents always take decision on the report of state governors or on the advice of union government. But in the different cases, Supreme Court have criticized or commended the decisions of presidents imposing the president rule in states, and here again the honor and dignity of office of presidents have declined. So this is the question, how can we ensure or enhance the position of the president? So then this is the topic. So you must cover this topic in the present scenario. Second is the CAG, Comptroller and Auditor General of India. He is the custodian of the public fund, and the role of Comptroller and Auditor General of India is increasing day by day, because union government and state government are not too much responsible, accountable for the public expenditure, and Indian peoples are not too aware. They could seek information from the members of the government or their parliament or state legislature. So here the responsibility of CAG is automatically increased. But recently we have seen, when the CAG makes audit of the different agencies or ministries, CAG have failed to trap different leakage of the public funds or corruption. However, they were proved by the other agencies or through the other channels. However, the CAG is a professional agency. If CAG have failed to intercept these corruption or the leakage of public fund, so definitely we have to enhance the position of CAG. What kind of powers must be vested in the hands of CAG? So then the position or performance or powers of CAG must be revised. You should include the preparation of this topic. And this is the Attorney General of India. Attorney General of India, the AGI. Attorney General of India is a first law officer of Union government, and he holds his office on the pleasure of Indian President. But there is a clash with the role of Attorney General of India. At a time, he advised the Union government as a first law officer, and he continue his private practice. So can it be justiciable, or can the Attorney General ensure just while he playing two kinds of role at a time? Then the one role of the Attorney General of India must be banned or not. Then here you must make your mindset. Next is the Election Commission of India, the important constitutional office. ECI, the role of Election Commission of India. You know, the Election Commission of India have praised by the different countries. The commission is not respectable within the country, outside the country at the global level. So many countries have praised the functioning of Election Commission of India. The commission have proved its transparency, free and fair elections. But recently we have seen so many political parties have raised allegations over the commissions. The commission has biased and played a biasful role toward the different political parties, or some political parties are trying to influence the commissions, and they have questioned on the electronic voting machines. So this is the topic, how can we ensure the power and functions and its transparent role, and what kind of new powers must be granted to the commission, and the commission how can express itself as the unbiased agency before the Indian peoples, before the all political parties. So the role of commission must be revised. And last is the speaker. The office of speaker and the deputy speaker is found in Lok Sabha and the state legislative assembly. Speaker mainly is elected from the any members of ruling party in Lok Sabha or in state legislative assembly. However, after becoming a speaker, he is not actively participate in the activities of political party. He maintained a distance, but he never given up or resigned the membership the respective political party. So here the question raised, can the speaker who is already a member of any political party and which is existing in the house play a transparent role or unbiased role? And the role of speaker have questioned before the Supreme Court, and Supreme Court also have commented. Speakers have empowered to take decision on the matters of anti-defections. In what circumstances the speakers took the decisions, and most of the decisions were challenged in the Supreme Court, and Supreme Court also realized or found the decisions or the role of speaker was not fair. So now this is the new question or approach. A speaker must be freed from any political parties, and the office of Lok Sabha speaker must be a fix as a government officer. Once a speaker, forever speaker, and a person is elected a speaker at a time, he must be continued this office till the retirement age of either 60 or 65. So definitely in this position he may render a transparent service. So why we are raising the such type of questions, the role of speakers have not unbiased or fair, so the speakers are not playing or not giving the good message by playing the transparent or honesty role as which I mentioned in the Indian Constitution. This is the information about some constitutional officers. If you have seen the last 10 years question papers of GS paper 2, definitely you can discuss, you can see or observe so many times UPSC have asked question from these topics. Next is the regulatory bodies. Regulatory bodies are those bodies which have given sufficient autonomy for working by the Indian Parliament or state legislatures. Further, we have divided these bodies in constitutional, non-constitutional, statutory and the non-statutory bodies. In the last exams of general studies question paper, if you have observed, so many times UPSC have asked questions from this topic. So first we will discuss some constitutional bodies. The one is the UPSC, Union Public Service Commission, Election Commission of India, and the Central Finance Commission. The three more important constitutional bodies, and they are the regulatory bodies too, and they are also the quasi judicial bodies or organization, because they have given some powers of civil courts. They can issue any order against the officials or any agency, and they can summon and they can order to present and they can seize documents in their offices. But these bodies didn't have the powers of criminal courts. You have already studied the UPSC Election Commission of India or Finance Commission, but here I will discuss only one or two aspects: the role of Union Public Service Commission and what kind of changes must be done or are required in the functioning of UPSC. UPSC is the central or the apex body of recruiting for the union governments, but what kind of exams have conducted or are conducting by the agencies, and what kind of authorities officials are recruited for the governments, they are not appropriate and they are not standing honestly on the parameters of our country's constitution or the expectation of peoples. So the demand is rising among the Indian peoples. The role of UPSC must be changed. Definitely after recruiting the top officials like IAS, IPS, IFS, these officials further after appointment found guilty and involved in the great and the heinous crimes and the different kinds of corruptions and so many embezzlements. Then how the UPSC is making a mistakes for recruiting them and what should be the new parameters. So, here the conventional role you have prepared, but additionally when you will face the interview board, definitely such question may be asked and may be put before you. What kind of changes would you expect in the role of UPSC? So, the changing scenario or the global era is demanding such changes. So, we must invest the changes in the UPSC. Second, the Election Commission of India. You know, the Election Commission of India is considered a top organization or constitutional body which is committed professionally to conduct free and fair election and which is respectable among the Indian people for their transparency. But recently we have seen so many political parties or other organizations have raised so many allegations against the commissions. Mainly they have targeted the electronic voting machines and they have stated that the commission have not transparent, it has biased towards the specific political parties. So, the commission have to accept this challenge and prove its transparency among the Indian peoples, and this is the responsibility of a commission to gain the belief and trust of all the political parties. No person, no political party could try to question mark the functioning of election commission. And further, the new power and teeth should be invested into the hand of Election Commission of India. For example, in the case of a dismissal or termination of the members of parliament, they must be brought under the umbrella of the Election Commission of India. In the case of anti-defection, these matters are resolved by the speakers of Lok Sabha, in the states by the speaker of Legislative Assembly. So, all the matters related to the members of Vidhan Sabha, Legislative Assembly or Lok Sabha, definitely they must be resolved or should be put before the commissions. You know, the Election Commission of India have stand itself not only in India but at the global level. So many countries have praised the functioning of Election Commission of India, but we have to change in the functioning of commissions. Next, the Finance Commission. The Finance Commission's the major role is to determine such standards of parameter for the allocation or distribution of revenues between union and states. But since its foundation 1951, the states continuously requesting or demanding to grant more financial resources, but the union government have not accepted this request, and the Finance Commission scientifically studied the requirements, need of the states and the responsibility of states and what revenue is transferred from the union government to the states. If is not enough, definitely the Finance Commission recommend to the union government to transfer more revenue for the state government so that they could successfully perform their responsibilities, and the Finance Commission's role also is under the reforms. Next is some statutory bodies like the National Human Rights Commission and National Commission for Women's and Central Information Commission. So, these are the statutory commissions or bodies because they have established by the parliamentary legislation or statute. National Human Rights Commission, working perfectly in India, but the commission has no more power to take independent decision in the different cases. The role of commission mainly is a consulting or the consultative body or advisory bodies. Commission found so many authorities or persons are guilty in the different cases, but commission itself cannot punish them. Commission finally suggests the union government to take action, and the different cases the union government have not take decisions. So the commission's requirements according to the present time are increasing. The definitely we must consider the role of the National Human Rights Commission. National Commission for Women's or the Rashtriya Mahila Ayog. The National Commission for Women's mainly have established to protect or save the women from different kinds of exploitation, torture and the crimes committed against them. But we are seeing the level of crime or graph is increasing day by day against the women, and commissions having a few powers, only a few powers, the commission is not taking strong decisions because commission mainly depends on sometime the union government or the state government. So here the National Commission for Women's, if we want to make these organization more strong, so definitely we have to invest some powers in their hands. Again the Central Information Commission, definitely its role is increasing day by day, because in India when we have implemented the Right to Information Act in the 2005, so every person which is or who is capable to seek information, to get information from any agency, department, ministries of governments, so this organization helps these persons, and the commissions also along with the NHRC or NCW doesn't have a punitive powers. Commission found so many agency organization guilty, but in that case commission only suggested in case of central government for the union government, in case of states it recommended the state government, but commission could not take itself decisions in these cases. So the performance of Central Information Commission must be improved. So here the one things clearly you can see, we have established these regulatory bodies, but we have not given sufficient power or teeth to these bodies. That's why they are not playing effective role, and we are raising so many questions against their performance, but the fact is on the other hand. And the other regulatory bodies are just like Reserve Bank of India, RBI. The role of RBI have increased. Definitely RBI is playing a perfect role. He is not only controlling all the commercial banks in India, also assisting the union government and state government and playing a role of the central government or the controller of monetary policy in India. So then slightly changes be required. Recently we have seen the Union Finance Ministry ordered to RBI, and some RBI governors did not like these orders, and they prima facie refused to obey these orders, and they stated RBI is a autonomous body and is liable to take independent decisions. We are also working in the favor of country, but we are the independent organization. However, theoretically RBI is liable to finance ministry. So there are some points or cases where we should clearly define the position of RBI or the union finance ministry. RBI the SEBI, Security Exchange Board of India, SEBI controls all the financial markets or the share markets in India, and there are so many corruption cases in share markets in the recent time or also in the past we have seen, and the not only thousands but millions of years have to suffer or have to afford loss in the share markets, and this was definitely a failure of SEBI only, because SEBI is a regulatory body. Being a regulatory body, how could a person dare to cheat the shareholders or any investors? So, in what areas we find the demerits or drawbacks in the functioning of SEBIs, the such power should be invested into the hand of SEBI. SEBI, IRDA, insurance sectors is regulated by the IRDA, and the PFRDA, the pension funds are regulated by PFRDA. BCCI, Board of Control of Cricket in India. BCCI recently have been news because the union government ordered to BCCI not to do these things or to do these things, and BCCI also reacted that BCCI is a autonomous organization. How could state government can interfere in the functioning of BCCI? So, the role of these regulatory bodies is increasing, and in the future definitely it will also increase. So, we have to prepare these bodies to strong, to transparent, to honesty, so that they could play their role honestly for the Indian peoples. The next topic in the syllabus is the governance, and there are so many subtopics are related to the governance, the governing issues. First, what are the basic principles of governance, the public governance in India? And I can say all the peoples or a majority of peoples is not satisfied with the governance which is rendered by union government or the state governments. Definitely we have to improve the functioning of both governing systems, and the another demand is raising corporate governance. The principal ethics of corporate governance must be infused into the public governance, because the corporate governance is committed to their peoples, their employers, their organization and their professional ethics, whereas in the public sectors, in the public governance, these values stands theoretically, not practically. So, would you like to infuse the corporate governance into the public governance, or there must be a separation between them? So, you have to prepare your mindset and drive some points here. Next, the governing issues. So, what is the main purpose of governance is? According to constitution or the parliamentary laws, the main objective of governance is to strengthen, to facilitate the vulnerable section or the weaker section of societies like the women's, old age person, widow women's, SC, ST classes. But in India we have seen the governance definitely have taken important decisions, but these classes have not facilitated absolutely, and till today they are facing so many challenges or problems. So, when we talk about the governance, so this is the responsibility of governing bodies, and these peoples and the different section of society are the suffering, then definitely it is a direct obligation or the direct failure of the governing bodies. So, we must ensure the commitment or targets of governance. Next is the other organization beyond the public governance. How can they assist or play important role as a subsidiary to the public governance, like the NGOs? different NGOs are working in India, self-help groups and the pressure groups, and they are sometimes called the parallel governance in India. And from the last 50 years, when we evaluate their role, definitely they have obtained important achievements in the different areas, and the areas must be covered by the public governance, but they are achieved by the by these organizations. So in future we have to increase the role of such organization, but we have seen the drawbacks and so many matters of indulgence in corruption and the mismanagement and the misuse of public resources by these organizations. So the role of these organizations must be improved. So you have to focus while you are preparing the topics. And the governance mainly playing an important role for the development, and development is a primary requirement of society and country, but there are some byproducts or side effects of the development process in India. Through the development we are degrading the natural resources like the waters, land and forest, wildlife. So the development is simply a contradictory to the environment or ecology, or we are working carelessly in this direction. So this is a debate that development always cause to harm these resources, or we can minimize such kinds of losses. Then now the governance must try, and governance must adopt such ideologies, technologies, approaches throughout the world, so that the developmental process could be create a minimum or sometimes nothing side effects. So these are the topics of governance. The last is the India's foreign relationship. This is the last topics of general studies paper 2. UPSC have mentioned the 4 lines in this. First is the India and its neighbors. Neighbors countries are the countries, their land boundary or maritime boundaries common with the India. So there are 8 countries are called the neighboring nations, and there are some other countries, they are the neighbors in oceans or and makes maritime borders with India. So then how can we prepare this line, and what kind of questions have asked by UPSC in the previous years? If you have observed the question paper, so definitely you must change your habit. Regularly you should start to see, overview the question papers. Through the question paper you can expand your mental horizontals, and you can observe and you can self evaluate. So the government of India also have observed or self evaluated and find we have not absolutely succeed in this field. However, government of India since the independence have taken so many steps to strengthen the foreign relationship with its neighboring nations, either the country may be the Pakistan, China, Sri Lanka, Myanmar, Bangladesh. When India tried to improve relationship with Pakistan, unfortunately India had to fight 3 or sometimes the 4 battles with the Pakistan. Now this was the Tashkent Agreement. What was the importance of Tashkent Agreement 1966? You have to study it in detail, because these agreements now are the basis or foundation of bilateral talks between India and Pakistan. The Simla Agreement 1972, India is completely cling with the Simla agreement, and according to this, India is not mentally prepared for the third country. The country should play role as the mediators between India and Pakistan, because in Simla agreement it have written all the disputed matters should be resolved by India and Pakistan through the bilateral talks only. No intermediatorship is allowed. So then you have to study the Indo-Pak relations and what kind of decisions have been taken by the government of India. And now what would you expect the government of India should take? For example, when you will face the interview board, some hypothetical questions are asked. For example, if you are a foreign secretary, then what advice would you render to Union government to improve the India's relationship with Pakistan? So now you have to start think about these topics. Second, the China. China is India's second more important neighboring country. In the past, we have seen so many agreements were signed between India and China. However, it was resulted into Indo-China War, Indo-Sino War 1962. After the 1962, what changes have been made into the India's foreign lines, foreign policy, and in the approach of China? So then, would you point out some changes? Then you should note down. And how can we improve the relationship with China, and why China is committed not want to accept the flexibility in the foreign relationship, and why India is focusing to strengthening their military powers to counter the China, why we are not focusing the economic sectors. You know, India is the country, around 40% of imports we depend from China, and on the other hand we are facing so many challenges, the border dispute with China. Then two things India is managing parallel. So that's why we have to priority the economic relationship. So through the economy we can resolve the boundary disputes or the military disputes. So then the China and Pakistan both are the enemy country for India. They are not agree to resolve these disputes very soon. And the position of Sri Lanka and Bangladesh, what is the opinion or foreign approach of India toward the Sri Lanka? Mainly in Sri Lanka there are the Tamil peoples, they are the indigenous Indian peoples resides in the Sri Lanka, and this is the historical development. So many times Indian government intervene in the matters of Sri Lanka, but this defamed India, and now India should not try to repeat these mistakes. Then how can we protect the interest of Tamil peoples in Sri Lanka? So definitely we have to want some other things than the conventional part if we want to resolve the relationship with Sri Lanka. Bangladesh, you know, Bangladesh was formed as a independent nation with the help of India in 1971 when the Indira Gandhi was Prime Minister. But in Bangladesh there are the two political parties. One is pro-India and another is anti-India. So definitely the India is facing challenges from the anti-India political parties. So many times the disputes with Bangladesh have emerged, and you know, India makes longest international land border with Bangladesh. So definitely challenges exist that time and till today. Then what should be the Indian foreign policy to manage relationship with Bangladesh? The next is bilateral relationship, multilateral relationship of global groupings, their agreements and impacts over India. If Russia and America have signed any defense agreement, so how this agreement will affect the Indian interest? Such kinds of questions have asked by UPSC. America have restricted or have imposed some restriction over the Russia not to share the specific defense technologies, cryogenic technology with India. So, definitely if there is a bilateral agreement between America and Russia, so then it will affect the Indian interest, because India is a partner of Russia and America not only at the defense sphere, in economic sector, in the other sectors. So, such kinds of topics we have to prepare according to the second line of syllabus. And the role of ASEAN, Association of Southeast Asian Nations, which is a regional trade agreements of Indonesia, Singapore, Malaysia, and India is culturally very close to this organization. If ASEAN countries have taken any decisions, definitely it will affect Indian interests. So, what should be the approach of India? And India is trying to enter or to be a member of ASEAN, but there are some barriers, and then you have to find out what are the barriers. If India have become a member of ASEAN, then what kind of benefits, economic, political, technical, will get India, and what kind of lacks India is facing while we are not a member of ASEAN. Same in case of the European Union. India is not a member of European Union, but the European Union if have taken any decisions, for example the exchange rate of 1 euro is increased compared to the Indian rupees. So, definitely decision is independent taken by the European Union, but is affecting the Indian interest. And also the SCO, Shanghai Cooperation Organization, India is a member of this international organization, and the decisions of SCO will directly affect the India. So, the bilateral agreement have signed or are signing between the two countries, multilateral or global groupings. So, definitely they are affecting the Indian interest. So, Indian foreign policy or Indian policy maker must be mentally prepared for this. Next line have been written in the syllabus is the decisions agreement of developed or developing countries and their impact over the India. Decisions of these countries, for example, if the Sri Lanka independently have taken decision to deploy their army against the Tamil peoples or Litti, this is a independent decision of Sri Lanka, but definitely is affecting the India or Indian interest, because India could not stand a silent as a silent country while the Sri Lankan army is suppressing or killing the Tamil peoples. India have to raise its voice at the global platform. So, then the decisions of Sri Lanka, Bangladesh, so many times the anti-India Bangladeshi political party have taken decisions and which have affected the interest of Hindus and Muslims residing in India, and also in Pakistan, recently Nepal and Bhutan, not Bhutan but Nepal mainly. Nepal now playing a role, and sometimes he is showing its orientation towards the China, sometimes the India. So, what decision will take by the Nepal? Definitely it is directly related to Indian interest, because we have the longest third longest border with the Nepals. Again the developed countries decision, Japan, France, Britain, Denmark, Canada, Brazil. So, these countries are taking so many decisions to improving their domestic or foreign policies, and these relations definitely will affect the Indian interest, because India is a large partner at the economic front or the other fronts. So, whatever is seen at the global level in the relationship of two or more countries or within a single country, it is the Indian interest. Last is the role of international organizations This is the last line of syllabus, and in this line international organization just like a UN, United Nations Organization, World Bank, IMF and WTO, the role of UN, and India is expecting or demanding to be a permanent member of Security Council. Why? Why India should be given membership of as a permanent member in Security Council? What are the sound proof or evidences which makes Indian position very strong? First thing, you have to prepare this topic. Second, what kind of changes would India expect in the functioning or role of the UN? You know, the UN is responsible for maintaining international peace and stability, but we are seeing in the different part of the world there is a turmoil, disturbance, unrest and terrorism, and UN is not taking effective action. Why? And how can we strengthen and how can we empower the position of UN? What kind of powers must be infused, and which are the countries or organizations are not taking interest to strengthen the UN? Such kinds of thoughts you should start to think these things. UN, then World Bank, the role of World Bank. World Bank mainly provides funds for the infrastructures, and India have received too much money from the World Bank, and World Bank published the annual report, the World Development Report. The reports disclose the Indian position in the global list, and India gets at the lowest rank. So definitely India should take this positively. The World Bank is presenting the India's position at the global level, and the role of IMF, International Monetary Fund, basically provides facilities for the balance of payment and balance of trade and the matters of exchange rate between the two or more countries. And you know, the India is maintaining unfavorable balance of trade and balance of payment both, and due to this India is trying to get more monetary facility from the IMF. So many times IMF have imposed so many restrictions over the India, and it has defamed India at the global level. And last is the WTO, World Trade Organization. When the WTO was formed in 1995, India like developing countries were assured the WTO will definitely improve the overall economy or relationship of these countries, but now we are seeing we have not grown too much in the agriculture sectors. The foreign investment have not increased as we expect in the primary sector, agriculture sectors or in the other sectors. So the claims of WTO have not successfully run in India. Next, the India will get a more benefit in the service sector or in the industrial sectors or technology, but in service sector India facing so many challenges due to the policies of WTO, and other is the position of intellectual property rights. WTO is the body of regulating the intellectual property rights or conserving these rights, but in India we have seen WTO have favored so many developed countries like America, Canada, Japan, Britain, and they have got the patents or copyrights or the other intellectual property rights, while they were basically belong to the India, and Indian aspect or Indian opinion was rejected. So then WTO basically is playing as a role of toys in the hand of developed countries, and through the WTO Indian economy is not getting too much economic advantage which was assured at the time of foundation of the WTO. So then how India should improve itself or its economy, or what are the other platform or alternates before India, and how can India pressurize the WTO to take those decisions were expected at the time of its foundations. So then when you will prepare these topics, the international organizations or the bodies, definitely you have to study or learn more and more things about this. Such kinds of questions or informations are required by the UPSC. So this is the analysis of the complete general studies question paper second. You may contact for any kinds of help. If I assure personally, if you attach with me, definitely you can crack this exam within a 6 or 8 minutes. So mainly I am committed to clear your mains examination, and I have expertise in general studies paper 1, 2, 3, 4 and the essay writing paper, and the optional history which was the my favorite subject in civil service mains exam, and I have faced 7 times the IAS mains exam I have cleared, and I have faced 3 times interview too. So you may contact if you honestly are dedicated to clear this exam, so then you never hesitate to take help. Thank you.